guys. Right. Well, this is going to be an interesting one. This is a suggestion via Discord when you guys sent this out to me. Said, check it out. You guys want my opinion, so we're here for it. We're going to start with a news article. All right. Wealthy white couple allegedly kept their black adopted children as, guys, and then obviously here, apparently this is where they were, right here, right inside of here. There were two of them that were found inside of this structure here. These are the two individuals who decided to do this. And before anyone says anything crazy, they were specifically targeted, guys. Right here, right here. Alleges that the adopted children were forced to work on a couple's farmland because of their race. That is the indictment, guys. Right? It is forced labor. There are 5 of them in total, but the 2 eldest were found actually inside of this structure right here, right? Again, this is their faces again, guys. The fact that this is even like a thing, like right now, like they honestly sought out these individuals because of the color of their skin and decided that they would be the best to work on their farmland. Can you imagine the level of like disgustingness, bro? And then obviously they were found in West Virginia, guys. But here's the thing: a couple of you guys have asked me, because every time kind of like West Virginia pops up, I always say this kind of the same thing here. West Virginia is in fact not a thing for me, right? And a lot of this just comes down from experiencing West Virginia and South Ohio, south of Pittsburgh. And I have always kind of stuck to my word here, bro. There are some issues there. I don't know what exactly it is. I mean, if you like being stared at consistently like you're an alien, then be in a place like that. East Texas, south of Ohio, south of Pittsburgh, West Virginia. I try to never, ever drive through this place. Let's go ahead and jump into this video here, guys. Check it out.
It's no secret how deep racism goes in this country, yet somehow we're still stunned by cases like the one we're bringing you tonight. We begin with a case out of West Virginia. Gene Whitefeather and Donald Lance, a white couple, are accused of treating their 5 adopted children like slaves. We know for sure 3 are black, according to the indictment. Prosecutors say the children were also targeted and adopted because of their race. The pair was arrested last fall.
Nice.
This was after a wellness check turned into a reveal about the living conditions of the children. 2 of the children, 14 and 16 years old, were found living in a barn outside. Neighbors tipped law enforcement off. Deputies discovered there were limited resources in that barn. The teens only had a small porta potty, no running water, or a mattress.
And we know that it was definitely an RV porta potty at that, guys. Like with the cassettes.
Small porta potty, no running water, or a mattress. According to neighbors, the children were not allowed inside of the home, the main house, and had to do farm labor outside instead. Whitefeather denies the allegations and says the barn was simply a teenage clubhouse.
Oh, yeah?
Whitefeather and Lance are now behind bars as they wait for a trial to begin September 9th. Joining us to talk about it here on The Factor Uncensored, we have with us parent David Settles, Todd Smith, the CEO of Regal Media, and trauma therapist Chow Nguyen. Glad to have you all on The Factor Uncensored. So, David, first of all, as a parent, hearing this story, and we have learned that the judge admonished them in court in another hearing, saying, I have never in my life seen anything like this. Your bond was $200,000. Come back.
Now it's higher.
It's now $500,000 each.
Yeah. And guys, really quickly, before we can jump into this here, people throw the word, you know, the R word around, let's say. They throw it around a lot in situations where they are absolutely not warranted. It seems to kind of end up being a way to character assassinate someone who looks different than you, right? But in this instance here, I'm not sure this, like, the overwhelming majority of Americans would hear this and think, okay, this is probably, you know, this is the case, right? If you want to know what it looks like this, right? This would be a, you know, unfortunately, you know, these kids had to deal with this, right? But this is the prime example of what the R word actually is, guys, right? This is what that is. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the judge did the right thing by increasing the bond. But as a parent, absolutely, it's downright deplorable, right? It's not even just disgusting, but it's purely evil at this point, right? And but to go back to the point about them raising the bond, you know, people have been talking about the foster care system and adoption regulations and things like that. Chances are there wasn't an adoption agency or any foster care system involved in this case because they raised the bond with allegations of like human trafficking. So we don't even know how these kids ended up in their care in the first place.
We do know they were adopted or they received their custody in Washington State and then moved to West Virginia. Were people wise? Were people getting concerned about what they saw in Washington and that's why they moved to West Virginia?
Right.
That's a question we still have to explore.
Right.
Two things come to mind. The child welfare system, which is an institution that really needs some serious reform. There was talk about defunding the CPS and foster care system. It's not there to protect the children in cases like this. That's a whole other issue. The institutions that are meant to support children can sometimes hurt them. And the other thing I think about is the trauma that's instilled on these kids for a lifetime. We talk about something called adverse childhood experiences, neglect, abuse, poverty, you know, unhealthy sanitary conditions, poor parenting. Those are things that can affect those children for a lifetime, that can create PTSD, anxiety, depression, poor relationships, poor jobs, crime. Those are very serious outcomes for those children.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're actually going to be able to get over it. Like specifically the ones who are in like their late teens, guys, 14, 16. How long have they been dealing with this? Imagine. And if, for example, guys, if you think that this is the only case, not specifically like race oriented, but if you think that this is the only case in America where kids are being adopted exclusively to be used as some type of maid servant or even worse, then you're wrong, right? And that's crazy. That's pure savagery on the people who are actually doing this here.
And Todd, we've heard that the 16-year-old boy in this case reeked and had sores on his feet. It was so bad the neighbors could smell it.
It just, if you look at the images, it looked like an old school plantation. The shed, the barn looked like a slave shack. It's just, like David said, it's just evil. And to think in 2024, you still have people who see black people and children at that as property, you know, just to use for their own purposes and stuff like that. The only way to describe it is evil. This is for the first time in my being on this show, I'm just flabbergasted. I have really nothing to say about how this is, but this is why we should take racism seriously. This is why when people talk about certain things, we should listen to them, because it's so easy to fall back into the trap of yesteryear when things happen that were this atrocious. You know what I mean? It's people would do evil things to people, to innocent people. So we have to really be careful about, you know, the race relations in this country and stuff like that, and so we won't fall back into that trap again.
I hear you, right, to a certain extent, but again, that word is thrown around at times where it's not even warranted, bro. All right, so yeah, should you be looking into all the cases? Sure, why not, right? But just do not attempt to prosecute before you actually have all of the information. And I think that's kind of where we are right now.
We heard from the judge and prosecutors that these kids were targeted because of their race. This is why those parents went after them.
So that's why we need to take a serious look at the child welfare system. We don't know what happened to these kids, but did you know that only 15% of all cases in which children are taken away from their parents involve physical violence? A lot of them involve neglect. We're talking about maybe there's not enough food at the table, maybe they weren't clothed properly, maybe mom or dad had an addiction problem, things that stem from trauma. If we can address keeping families together and address things like poverty and prosperity and economic prosperity, maybe we can keep families together so we don't see these situations. Something has to seriously be done about that institution.
And we're hearing that they also sold a $700,000 ranch and a $200,000 house, I think.
Yeah, it was $725,000 for 80 acres.
The house
as well.
That they were in.
And prosecutors are questioning how they were able to get that money, whether those kids played a role in forced labor to pay for those things.
I mean, we don't know, but it would seem so. Like they had
maybe
source of income that the judge knew about. So how are you making this type of money? They're enslaving people.
Yeah.
You know, they're trafficking kids. You know, they think it's 1824, not 2024. And like Charles said, we have to start at the root and fix some of the problems that people are having that lead to this situation, because there's no child that should be. These kids are going to be traumatized for life. And the excuses that they use, it was a clubhouse. When I was a teenager, I didn't want nothing to do with a clubhouse. I wanted to hang out with my friends and do normal things. That's elementary stuff. And the fact that the cops had to pry the door open. If that's a clubhouse, why can't they come and go?
Right.
I have friends that have clubhouses for their children. They can come and go as they please. So all of that is nonsense. They are enslaving people. And I've mentioned this before on this show. People think slavery ended in 1865. Through convict leasing and other things, black people have always had to deal with the
Well, let me hear that again.
They are enslaving people. And I've mentioned this before on this show. People think slavery ended in 1865. Through convict.
1865. I think for the most part legally, like federally it did, but did it end actually? No. There was a lot more. There were a lot more things that were going on where you can take the name away from it, right? But there was still like sharecropping and all types of indentured servitude that was actually still going on. So yeah, it didn't end in that time. I think federally it did, but.
Convict leasing and other things, black people have always had to deal with the possibility of being enslaved again. And now in 2024, we have kids having to go through things that my ancestors went through. And it's horrifying.
Last 30 seconds.
14% of this country is a black population, yet 25% of all kids in the child welfare system are black. There's a serious racism problem in the foster care and the child welfare system.
All right. We want to thank you all for joining us here on The Factor Uncensored. We could go on and on tonight about.
Here's the thing. When it comes to like adoptions, right? See, I looked to adopt a couple of years ago. And I was just like, you know what? Listen, we're doing well. I don't really specifically want my wife to ever be pregnant again, right? Because she's, kind of hard to deal with, pregnant women. But I would just prefer not for that to happen. So I was just like, listen, what about adopting? That could be an option. We looked into how much it costs, and I was like, bro, wait, huh? Right? And if you're talking about how what she just said here is that a large population of black Americans are in the foster care system. Generally, if you go to get a kid, you're going to find one that kind of looks like you, right? And based off of the economics of the United States of America, black Americans are not the most wealthy. Right. So with that being said, how can the average black American even afford to adopt a kid? How can they? The average, overwhelming average, it's not plausible, right? So that's the reason why you're saying that there's a lot of isms, right, happening within the foster care system. The reality is that when you go to adopt, you normally are going to go for someone who looks like you, right? They fit into your family visually. You get less, comments and on the street type of thing. That's the reality, I would say. Looking at it like with just straight logic and no emotion, right? But I would think that that's pretty much the case here, guys. Now, what they did was absolutely terrible. I'm sure everyone could agree on that here. But does this situation mean that the concept of using humans in bondage is coming back at any time soon? No, bro. It just means that this happened. I'm not sure that this is, in fact, indicative of a much larger problem. I think that it's just indicative of terrible people. But this is a lot, guys. But all right, listen, you guys all have an absolutely amazing day. Enjoy your day thoroughly. Guys, before we go, are you guys subscribed to the other channels? Logical Movie Reviews with Mr. L. Boyd, along with Mr. L. Boyd Music. Both are found in the description. Check it out.